This is a Victor Model 200 adding machine from the 1920s. It has a full 8-digit keyboard with 4 more special buttons, a long-armed crank with a wooden handle, a display on the front, and a printing mechanism on the back, with a 2-color ribbon. The case is all metal, probably iron, painted black with bright green highlights. This thing weighs 30 pounds. It's more than one of these. The Victor 200 was first produced in the 1920s by the Victor Adding Machine Company and sold for $100, which today would be about $1,300. This particular model was apparently owned by Way Better Used Cars in Wallingford, Connecticut. I'm not absolutely sure this is the Victor Model 200. In 1926, Victor came out with the 300, which had a subtraction button, and mine doesn't have that, so I think this is the 200. When this machine was designed, the market was dominated by the Burroughs Adding Machine Company. In the 1910s, the Burroughs machine looked a lot like the Ford Model T. The Victor is clearly influenced by the Burroughs design. It's even got the same black and green colors. But the Victor's matte finish and boxier build makes it look less like a Model T and more like a Ford M1918. That was a tank they made for World War I. The Burroughs was shiny and classy. It's the kind of machine that you'd operate like in a high-ceiling room wearing a 3-piece suit. To me, the Victor looks more like a machine you'd operate in a dark basement wearing a green visor. The numbers push down with a real nice click, and you can feel a satisfying deep crunch when you pull the handle. If you ever enjoyed using an old typewriter, you'll probably like the Victor 200. The mechanism sounds and feels great. The handle gives just the right amount of resistance, so you feel like you're doing some work when you pull it, but it's not too hard, it's not going to make you tired. You know, the Victor Adding Machine Company is still in business. Now they're called Victor Technologies.
You need a calculator from Victor Technology.
And apparently they're the leaders in the printing calculator market today, which I guess is something, although I don't think that's a very big market. You know, if you go to their website, you can see they're trying to innovate. They've got a calculator that's made of all recycled plastic, which is, I guess that's good. They also have one of the most ridiculous ideas I've ever heard of. They have 8 different models of antimicrobial calculators. Antimicrobial calculators. I don't know what they're... The only real operation this thing does is adding. Each time you type in a number and pull the crank, your number gets added into the running total, which you can see at the bottom. Each column of numbers on the keyboard represents a digit of input. So to input the number 425, I push the 5 on the rightmost column, the 2 on the second column, and the 4 on the third. The numbers you push will stay down until you pull the crank, and if you make a mistake and hit the wrong number, you can just hit another one and the other one will pop back up. Once you typed in all your numbers, you pull the crank and whatever you typed gets added into the total. Now let's talk about the printing. Every time you pull the crank, the number you typed will be printed on the paper. And the total doesn't normally get printed. If you want to print the total, you hold down the red total button while you pull the crank. Then the total gets printed in red and then reset to 0. This blue subtotal button will print out the total, but it doesn't reset it to 0, so you can keep going. This blue non-add button will print out the number you typed without adding it into the total. Apparently this was used for printing out account numbers or other kinds of things you want to print but you don't actually want to add with. Typically this machine would have been used for adding together big long columns of numbers, usually dollars and cents. So just for fun, I thought I'd add up the receipt I've got. I went to a pizza place last night. Let's see if they did the math right. All right, I got $2.75, $3, 19, 11, 11, 12.50, 125. I like that. There's one more button next to the crank, and the plastic top on it is missing on my machine. It's actually more of a switch. This is the repeat switch. When you push down on this thing, the machine goes into repeat mode. If you want to come out of repeat mode, you just hit the side of it and it pops back up. When you're in the repeat mode, it means that when you pull the crank, the number you typed into the keyboard does not clear itself out. So you can use the repeat mode to do simple multiplications. Like if I want to do, say, 1337 times 5, I key in 1337, I put on the repeat mode and turn the crank 5 times. When you do this, the number doesn't clear out every time you turn the crank. So the effect is to add this number, keep on adding it to itself 5 times. To do multi-digit multiplications, there's a cute little trick. It works just like when you multiply on paper. Let's say I'm going to multiply 264 times 53, and on paper it's the same as doing these two different multiplications separately and then adding the answers together but offset by one position. So I'm going to do 264 times 3, and then 264 offset 1 to the left times 5. This is a little tricky to get right, but once you get the hang of it, it's not hard at all. This is a great machine. It was built almost 100 years ago. You know, I've been thinking about it. I'm not sure that I own anything else that's 100 years old that's still in working condition. Actually, I have some really old books, but I don't even want to open them because they're falling apart, right? This thing was built 100 years ago, and it still works exactly the same as it was intended to work the day it was built. That's pretty remarkable. I also have a hard time thinking of anything that I own that I expect to be working 100 years from now. 100 years in the future, you know, my car's not going to work anymore. My computers, my electronics, they definitely are not going to work anymore 100 years into the future. But, you know, I'd be willing to wager this Victor 200, I bet 100 years from now, in the year 2120 or whatever, I think this thing will still be cranking. You know, even when we're flying around in our flying cars and drinking blue space milk, this Victor thing will still work just like the day it was born. When my body has grown old and ravaged by a lifetime of exposure to calculator-born microbial disease, I'll still be able to close my eyes at night and hear this sweet sound.